You guys want to talk about forgotten Sigs? I'm going to assume that's a yes because I can't hear you. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. Forgotten Sigs. You guys probably know many of the Sigs. The M17, M18, the military's new handgun. The M7, the military's new rifle. Sigs really come on strong in the past decade or so. They have legendary handguns like the 226. But they have a lot of lesser known guns. Forgotten Sigs. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way, with Almighty God at the center. Biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Military, law enforcement, competitive shooting, private contracting, background, bio, bullet points in the show notes. Anyway, let's start talking about forgotten Sigs. I'm going to start off with one that is forgotten but very relevant for today. Talked about the M17 and M18, the military's new handgun, which is a variant of the 320, which has been around a while. And no, I don't think that if you look at it, it's going to put your eye out. I don't think it's going to randomly explode. I don't care what the gun tube glitterati says. I'm not an engineer, but looking at that gun and how it works, I don't see how that's possible. I could be wrong. But I need evidence. Evidence is evidence, not hearsay. But like it or not, or think it's going to explode in your face or whatever you think, it is a force to be reckoned with on the American firearms market. It's a huge portion of the firearms market. It is not the first, but the first highly successful modular handgun system. And it is the basis for, again, all of the armed forces sidearm, the M18 and the M17. But did you know it was based on a different design? The Sig P250. The P250 uses, I believe, the exact same grip modules. I believe it uses the exact same magazines. And it was a modular handgun system. It was not widely successful. That's why it's forgotten. But it was a double action only. Today, everything, striker fire, polymer plastic, striker fire. But there was a time when that wasn't the case. There was a time when law enforcement agencies largely carried revolvers. And in that time when they went from revolvers, some of them were distrusting of striker-fired systems. And the striker-fire system did not become the most prevalent overnight. There was a time when people still saw hammer-fired guns as the solution, and they still saw double action as the solution, either double single, which was a lot of the handguns of the day, Beretta 92, Sig 226s, HK-USPs were big back in the day, but they thought that first double action pull would stop people from having a negligent discharge. A negligent discharge. I don't agree with that. I would say just be safe and follow your safety rules. However, that was the idea of the time. And I think in keeping with that, Sig came out with the 250, a double action only. Let's make our law enforcement slow and less effective. Why not? We don't actually want them to use their guns anyway. So they came out with the 250. I don't think that was a fault of Sig. It was just the tactical mantra du jour that you would want a long, heavy double action trigger pull, so you didn't actually use the gun or didn't actually use it quickly. I'm not a big fan of double action, as you can tell. I love hammer-fired guns, but I'm a fan of single action only. I carry a 226 in single action only. Anyway, the 250, it spawned, even if indirectly, the 320 and the M17, M18. So I think we should start off with that one because it has a huge influence on the firearms handgun market today. Another one that I'm going to mention, and I think it's one of the very good carry handguns that is forgotten, and that is the Sig 239. You're probably familiar with the 226 and the 229, the full-size and compact versions of their classic military double single, the M28, whatever it is. M11, I believe it is. You're probably familiar with those, but they made a single stack. I would call it a subcompact, and it came in 9mm, 357 Sig, which is cool, and 40 Smith & Wesson, which is not cool. But the 239 is a very cool, very carryable gun without being unshootable. You start getting into little baby micro guns, and they're way less shootable. This is a fighting handgun that's actually small and easy to carry, and it's got a decent amount of firepower, even though it is single stack. It's got good ergonomics. It's got if you want to deal with the double single action, if you are a double single action connoisseur, it is a fantastic handgun and largely forgotten, but a fantastic quality, fantastic shootability, good sights, good trigger. I don't know why it would be any less durable or, good in harsh conditions than the 226. So it's a good gun, even if it's been forgotten. Now we talked about small. Let's talk about some even smaller carry guns. The Sig P, and I think all the Sig pistols start with P. So if I just say the numbers and forget the P pistol, it probably correctly has a P in front of it, like the P250 or the P320. But forgive me if I forget the P, since they all have it. It seems kind of superfluous. Anyway, super little teeny tiny carry gun, the P238. It's a little tiny 380. Big deal. The market is flooded with little tiny 380s. What I call the hashtag Me Too gun, because you're just like, oh, me too, I have a gun. Jumping on the bandwagon like the hashtag Me Too thing. There's that. There's the Bodyguard. There's the P3AT. There's a bunch of little baby 380s. So why even mention this one? Well, one, we're doing one of Forgotten Sigs, but also this is completely different than all those. This is a metal on metal, really high quality, removable grips if you want to change your grips out. Single action only, which I said I prefer. Consider it like a simplified baby 1911, kind of like the old Colt Mustang. It would be more akin, though, if you're familiar with it, of the 220. Like a little teeny tiny shrunk down, single action only, thumb safety, good trigger, good sights, very tiny 380. I would never want to carry a little micro 380 for really any reason. I think there's better choices in about every category. But if you said I had to carry a little baby 380, I would pick this, I think, over anything else if I was actually going to have to use it. Which I think a lot of people that carry those think they're never going to have to use them. And in which case, what are you doing? Like, you're carrying the gun in case you have to use it. If you have to use your gun, is a little baby 380 really what you want? That's debatable. But if you are going to carry a little baby 380, probably the most shootable one that I'm aware of that I've ever had any experience with is the 238 or the P238. You might think, well, that's great, but 380's lame. Why don't they make it in a 9mm? Well, they do. That's another forgotten Sig. The 938 or the P938. The Sig 938 is pretty much the same thing I described, a little baby 9mm. I'm talking tiny, teeny tiny. It's slightly bigger than the 380, but it is in 9mm. It's single action. It's got a thumb safety. It's beautiful for what it is, a little tiny 9mm. Now, these don't have the greatest reputation in my experience with reliability. I've never seen many issues with the 238s, but when they scaled it up to 9mm for whatever reason, too big a caliber and too small a gun, you see this sometimes. I don't know that they're the most reliable. Now, if you have one and yours is reliable, that's fantastic. Or if it's reliable with the ammo that you run in it. I would not expect this to be, a Glock 19 or a Sig 226 as far as reliability. But if you have one and you put the time into getting it tuned and getting the load that it likes, they're a cool little, very small, very good trigger, very good sight 9mm, the 938. Now, you're probably familiar that Sig makes a lot of really good, really high-end fighting rifles. So I'm not going to talk about those. They also make a budget rifle. They make the Sig Tread, which is an entry-level AR. thinks this is forgotten. The AR market is flooded, and there are a lot of good choices. I've said many times, if you're just going to get an AR and you want your one and done, you want it to be affordable, get a Colt 6920. It's the standard. It's been the standard for decades. It's still the standard. If you just want an AR that's good, that's affordable, get a Colt 6920. I've also said the Smith & Wesson M&P. Even I often forget about the Sig Tread. But the Sig Treads are great. I have one. I bought it used. It was such a good deal with the accessories on it. I was like, I'll shoot it. If it's not a shooter, I'll just piece it out. And the spare parts alone will be worth the money. Well, I shot it. And as soon as I shot it, I was like, I don't want to mess with this thing. It's crazy accurate. I mean, ridiculously accurate. Bolt gun accurate. And I got it for a song and a dance at a gun store used. And I bought it for the accessories. But I shot it and I was like, oh. Now, they had it mounted with just a red dot, so maybe they didn't know how accurate it could be. But to give you an idea, I finished out my last competition season of, service rifle high power civilian marksmanship program. I finished it out with the Sig Tread with an LPVO on it. I had to put a worse trigger in it because it's, service rifle, and service rifles have garbage triggers. So I had to put a standard garbage trigger in the rifle, which saddened me. But even with that garbage trigger with an LPVO, it's a very, very good and accurate gun. I finished, again, my entire season I shot with the Sig Tread. It's a good gun. It's a very accurate gun. So if you're looking for a good, affordable AR-15, throw it on the list. I think it's forgotten, the Sig Tread. Now, this might be confusing, but if I said Sig556, you might be thinking an AR. But they made an AK. Talk about forgotten. The Sig556 AK, it's an AK variant. Now, you could argue whether it's a pure AK, in which case you could argue that an AKM, which is most of the AKs, is not an AK. You could argue that any AK on the American market is not an AK because it's semi-auto and not full auto, if you're going to be a purist. But this is an AK operating system. Let's call it an AK. At least I'm going to. So Sig made an AK, and by some accounts, and I've never owned one of these, they're crazy expensive and kind of hen's teeth. But by all accounts, by people that know and are AK aficionados, the best AK ever made. And that might upset some people. I'm talking about for a fighting rifle. Obviously, if you're a collector and you want Cold War nostalgia, you probably want a Russian AK. Milled receiver, whatever. But as far as you're going to actually use one, from what I understand, this is the best AK variant ever made. I don't believe these were made by Sig USA. These were made by Sig in Switzerland. But by all accounts, a fantastic AK made by Sig. Okay. Talking about things overseas. A gun that didn't get a lot of use in America, but got some use in, of all places, France. Now, don't hold that against the gun. Just because the gun is used by the French doesn't make it gay. Okay? It's not the gun's fault that the French chose to adopt it. But it is the Sig Pro, the Sig 2022. Picture the same operating system, same rugged reliability of the Sig 226, but with a polymer frame, and a really beefy, robust polymer frame. So you still got double single, you still got good sights, you still got that good reliability, but in a polymer frame. And if you don't like plastic, that's fine, get the 226. But, Glocks, as much as I rag on them for being just the bare minimum of a usable handgun, they're not undurable, and they're not unreliable, and they're plastic. So if you think that plastic's not good, then you'd have to say the Glocks aren't good, which even I would say they're barely acceptable. This gun, I think, is better. It's the Sig Pro P2022. It's a great gun. And since they were sold here on the American market, but they were never a big success in the American market. That's why they're on today's episode. But they're a fantastic gun. If you're looking for a good, bug-out bag gun, crazy reliable gun, backwoods carry gun that you can just get wet and nasty and dirty, and you can find for very affordable, often on a used market, you're like, wow, that's like a tourist price, and it's a Sig. You might look for the 2022 if you're looking for a really good, affordable Sig, or if you want a good affordable gun that you can just shoot a ton of ammo through, or you want to try the double single action on a full-size fighting handgun affordably, you might look at the 2022. It's a good forgotten Sig. And since we're talking about, and it was adopted by the French police, if you care about that. One that's cool, that's on the list, that has some nostalgia. If you're into, like, again, Cold War memorabilia, Cold War militaria, you're probably familiar with this gun. But if you're just an American shooter, you're probably not. And it's the Sig P6. It's a German police-issued pistol, single stack 9mm. The P6. Now, I would not get this if you're going to put a bunch of rounds to it and shoot it. Those people will say, like, they don't make them like they used to. Well, the modern Sigs are made better than those old ones. Like, the old German Sigs are cool, but they're, I believe, stamped metal, sheet metal slides. They're not rated for plus P ammo. Not that I recommend plus P ammo all the time, but I think if you're getting a gun for serious use, it should be able to at least handle plus P ammo. I don't know that the Sig, P6s are. You could probably shoot a couple rounds to it, but again, the P6 is more of a collector. If you're going to, carry one, I would get something else. If you're looking for a single stack 9, I'd go with that, 239. But the P6 is a cool Sig. And again, if you're into Cold War militaria, you probably know. But if you're just an American shooter, you may not. The Sig P6 is a very cool gun and a very cool part of history. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Forgotten Sigs. I've done a few of these, Forgotten Rugers, Forgotten Winchesters, Forgotten Sigs. Hopefully you guys like these. I've tried to spread them out in case you don't, not do a whole week of forgotten stuff. But I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all that you do. We talked about old German stuff there at the last part. For your tactical tip, and I don't often do products, but Ballistol. It's a great product, not just for gun cleaning. It's good for that too, but it's also good on wood and leather. If you're a wood and leather kind of guy, it's great for that. Even like treating your boots. But it's also good for wound cleaning, which there's a lot of good gun products that are good. Just regular old CLP is good for cleaning guns, but I wouldn't want to put CLP on my wounds. Ballistol is also good for wound cleaning. So if you're looking for something for your bug out bag, for your kit, that's a good all-around product, Ballistol is hard to beat. Plus, it smells delicious. Anyway, I'm not sponsored by Ballistol. I'm not part of some big Ballistol cabal. It's a good product, all right? With that, your tactical verse of the day. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, submit to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Thanks, men, and have a blessed day.